So this morning centres around the chapter from Katie's book, and this is very, very interesting indeed. Katie, whom I think many of you probably know already, is a long-time Plum Village practitioner who's a member of Sangha in the Peak, and Katie, amongst other things, is someone who works with mindfulness in industry and out there in the world. And in our Plum Village practice, Katie works is one of the founder members of the Be Calm, Be Happy courses. So really established in our practice. And Katie and I were talking earlier in the week about our meeting this morning, and I do quite a lot of work with Wait Up schools, and we had a very, very interesting discussion about our personal practice in relation to outreach in the world. This is a very interesting theme as we get closer and closer to realising Ty's vision of having a practice centre in the UK, an opportunity for us all to share in that way. So that point in which the outside world and our own practice touch and become one. Very, very interesting indeed. Katie's contributed a chapter to a wonderful book to be published shortly by Parallax Press, the Plum Village publishing house. The book's called Tears Become Rain, and it's 32 practitioners who are writing about mindfulness and daily life in different aspects. I've been fortunate to be able to look at a electronic preview copy of it. It's an absolutely fascinating book. Should you be interested in it, we'll publish the details. It's a book it's going to come out a little bit later on in October, and all the proceeds are going to go to support the Thich Nhat Hanh Foundation. And this means that the 32 writers have, each contributed from their own hearts about practice and in daily life. And Katie's chapter is about practice and health, in this instance about diagnosis with cancer. And a very, very powerful topic. So what we're going to do now is going to hand over to Katie to set the scene, the story and the guided meditation, and we'll see how our morning unfolds. Thank you, dear friends. Katie, over to you.
Thank you, Miles. Good morning, dear friends. It's beautiful to see so many of you here, many of whom have been a tremendous support to me over all of the years where I've been within the Plum Village community. You're very precious to me. So yes, as Miles said, now some of you may remember that way back in 2019, there was a call went out to the whole of the Plum Village community asking if we would like to contribute stories of how ordinary people, which is definitely me, how ordinary people have been touched and supported by Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. And the two wonderful editors, who I've never met in person, I've only seen on a Zoom call once and exchanged emails with, are Mary Hilbrand and Janine Kogan. They're both based in the States. And they accepted those hundreds of stories that were submitted and gradually edited us down to 32 stories, which we hope represent the experience of our whole community. So the story that I contributed, I was diagnosed with cancer back in 2014. It was actually November the 4th, so we're coming up for the 9-year anniversary. And I was so grateful to have my practice at that point and throughout my experience that's what I contributed for consideration for the book. So I'd like to share that story with you now. I'm going to move my screen, so although you can see me, I can't see you. I'm reading the story on my screen, which hopefully will look okay. And then I will invite 3 sounds of the bell, because I'm sure I will need to settle again by then. And then I'll share a meditation which meant a lot to me and was incredibly supportive through my whole cancer experience. And then invite the bell again. And then, as I say, I'm very happy to share more about my experience and to take any questions that you may have to guide the conversation in a way that I hopefully is helpful for us all. So, my story is called Phew, what a wonderful colon I have. Phew, what a wonderful colon I have, I think. On the monitor screen, it looks healthy, and the consultant doing the colonoscopy seems happy and chatty. Well, just turn the camera around and look back at this last little part just to double check that area, she says. And suddenly there it is, a gaping wound with strange, gently bleeding little nodules around it. There's a slight pause, a missed beat in the conversation. We'll take 6 biopsies from this area, she says, trying to be brave. And a thin metal instrument slides into view on the screen and starts to take little bites from the nodules and from around the wound. I close my eyes and find my attention automatically searching out the sensations of breathing within my body, looking for comfort, for that peaceful core of inner strength that has been gradually building over years of practice with my Plum Village Sangha, Thich Nhat Hanh's community of practice. Breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. On the in-breath, I say in. On the out-breath, I say out. In, out, in, out, in, out. In the midst of strong emotion, my breathing is safe and familiar. Slight pause between the out-breath and the in-breath is always a peaceful place that remains secure. Even when I feel adrenaline rising and emotions beginning to surge, I notice shock. It's a kind of nothing feeling, an emotional pause between life before and life after this moment. Breathing in, I am aware of my feeling of shock. Breathing out, I take care of my feeling of shock. Aware, taking care. I seem to be crying, but it's just a few tears gently rolling down my cheeks. I am silent, breathing whilst they finish taking the biopsies. Breathing in, I am aware of my tears. Breathing out, I take care of my tears. Aware, taking care. Well, at least I qualify for free art therapy now. I've always fancied having a go at that, and it really helped my brother-in-law Paul when he was first diagnosed with brain cancer. Breathing in, I am aware of my random thought and seemingly inappropriate feeling of happiness. Breathing out, I smile and take care of my happiness. Aware, taking care. Paul died, though, aged just 35 years old. My sister, her children, my children, our parents, our whole family was devastated. What if I die too and they have to go through all of that again? Well, that would break my heart as well as theirs. Breathing in, I am aware of panic starting to arise. Breathing out, I take care of the panic. Aware, taking care. Aware, taking care. The panic starts to settle down, and for now, I'm not quite sure how I feel. Breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. In, out. The consultant has finished the procedures. She's taken off her gloves and washed her hands. There is a slightly hushed, practical chat between her and the other nurses in the room. She walks around to my head as I'm still lying on my side, a sheet now pulled down to cover my legs. She takes my hand and looks into my eyes. What else could it be, I ask. We'll have to wait for the results of the biopsy, she says. We look at each other. We both know it could be nothing else except cancer. But in her eyes, in the strength of her hand around mine, I can feel that she wants me to survive, that she's sorry for what we have just discovered together, that her support, concern, and care for me are absolutely unconditional. All those things I tried so hard to achieve and all I had struggled to be are suddenly irrelevant. We haven't known each other long enough for her to know about them. In that moment, it is just one human being connecting with another and willing them to stay alive, to keep breathing. And now if we'd all like to settle ourselves for guided meditation, I'd like to share with deep gratitude one of the meditations that I practiced daily, often more than once a day, and developing my own form of it in terms of being aware and smiling to every cell of my body, particularly the ones that were suffering. So this is taken from Blooming of a Lotus, exercise 5, in deep contact with the parts of my body. Breathing in, I am aware of the hair on my head. Breathing out, I smile to the hair on my head. My hair, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my eyes. Breathing out, I smile to my eyes. My eyes, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my ears. Breathing out, I smile to my ears. My ears, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my teeth. Breathing out, I smile to my teeth. My teeth, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my smile. Breathing out, I smile to my smile. My smile, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my shoulders. Breathing out, I smile to my shoulders. My shoulders, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my arms. Breathing out, I smile to my arms. My arms, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my lungs. Breathing out, I smile to my lungs. My lungs, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my heart. Breathing out, I smile to my heart. My heart, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my liver. Breathing out, I smile to my liver. My liver, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my kidneys. Breathing out, I smile to my kidneys. My kidneys, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my feet. Breathing out, I smile to my feet. My feet, I smile. Breathing in, I am aware of my toes, and breathing out, I smile to my toes. My toes, I smile.
Katie, thank you very much indeed.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Dear friends, there now follows a period before our break for questions and answers. And there are several ways of asking a question to Katie. One is to write a question in the chat. The other is to raise a hand. Please be aware if you raise a hand that when you're called on to speak, you will be recorded. This will be edited down and sent out. So first, there's a question in chat. There's raising a hand. And it's a deep subject. If you would like to ask a question anonymously, you're very welcome to do so. And in that case, if in chat you would send it to me, Miles, I will endeavour to ask that question on your behalf. Okay? So three ways: either write a question in chat, raise a hand, or for an anonymous question, send it to me, today's facilitator. While we're thinking about that, I'm going to drop in chat deep to everyone details about how to order the book. It will be available through the Plum Village UK online book service. I endeavoured to find a link to that this morning. I'm afraid the link doesn't appear to be up in a way that I could get, so apologies for that. But I think what I've just sent out, what I've just sent out is the title. I'm going to do it again in a minute. What I'll send out is a live link to one of the big bookshops, which in this instance will be Waterstones, but I think this will be available in any bookshop. So there we go. So our first question is coming in. That's good. And I think before we begin, let's just take a minute or two to allow the questions to arise in ourselves. And there's one from Sylvie, which is good. So let's just take another minute, and perhaps you might wish to add to the questions in chat. So we'll just come back to our breaths just for a moment. Please write as soon as you feel ready. I'll invite the bell while we sit for a minute, and again after a minute when we'll ask Katie to respond. Thank you, dear friends. So please keep those questions coming. Dear Katie, there are a couple of questions in chat. Would you like to begin there?
Well, the only one that I can see is from lovely Nancy, who I sit with in Sangha at the Peak. So lovely to have you here, Nancy. The question is, Katie, was there ever a time you felt the practice was failing you? Great question. No, I never ever felt that the practice was failing me. I felt that at times I couldn't handle the fear very well, for example. But actually it was the other way round. So within the world of cancer, and I'd been working in cancer support for about 20 years before I got cancer myself. I used to work in the brain tumour community because that's the type of cancer that my brother-in-law Paul passed away from, was a brain tumour. And so I was very aware that there are some wonderful tapes and things like that out there to listen to that kind of help you with visualization to, for example, mobilize your immune system to fight against the cancer. And so I was listening to tapes like that, and one night, actually one of the darkest nights that I had, and I still remember it so clear, I was on the sofa and it literally was dark. And I couldn't imagine a future because I was frightened. And although I knew that there was 80% chance of cure, it was over a year before, well over a year before I knew whether or not I was one of the lucky ones that would survive. And 80% chance of cure sounds quite good until you're standing in a room with 10 people and you realise that two of us wouldn't make it. So those stats were very alive for me through that whole period. And I thought, well, if I can't imagine a future according to so much of what is talked about in cancer, where it's all about positive thinking and that's what pulls you through, and I just thought, well, if I can't think positively, I'm going to die. And it was one of the most bleakest moments. And what my mindfulness practice enabled me to do in that moment was to think, why do you think that? Is that a true perception or a false perception? Where does it come from? And I realized that the flip side of always being told that positive thinking helps, well, the flip side, if you follow it through, which is why my brain had gone to that place, was, well, if I can't think positively, I'm not going to survive. And I literally got up and threw all those tapes in the bin and went back to pure mindfulness, because what mindfulness enables me to do is to be frightened. Mindfulness enables to me to just reach those darkest places and to turn towards those darkest places with compassion. It allows me to feel whatever I am feeling and to take care of that. And so instead of turning away from the practice, I actually turned more towards it. And that for me is one of the most vivid moments where I turned towards the practice. So yeah, that's really stayed with me, the self-compassion and whatever we feel. And even if we're not practicing perfectly, that's okay too. Very important lesson for me. So thank you, Nancy. Beautiful question. Oh, Miles, I can't hear you at the moment, I'm afraid, but
Here I come. Thank you. A question comes in from Sylvia. It's were you able to use the practice to not take it as a personal thing? It was just happening to you, not about you.
great question
Isn't that
from
wonderful?
lovely
Mm.
Sylvia. Yeah, another dear friend. Yes, that's a good way. I genuinely hadn't thought of it like that, Sylvia. But yes, I didn't feel as though I was being punished. Um, but I did have to go through that thought process, because it's a very human thing, I think, to say, what have I done wrong? And I did delve in to the science to find out what caused that type of cancer and whether I could have done anything to avoid it, which I couldn't have done. Um, and and so once I was able to know that I couldn't have done anything differently, then it was much more the case of acceptance. And I think the other way of phrasing your really wonderful question is this idea that I've touched on already, which was of turning towards my body with compassion. And I mentioned that briefly as we went into the meditation, because I was able to realize that the cells in my body did not want to have cancer. Definitely. They were in a lot of pain. My cells were in a lot of pain. I was in very extreme pain for over a year. Um, and so that enabled me to be more concerned about comforting my body, comforting my cells, um, than feeling that something was happening to me that was malevolent, as it were. I also knew that I couldn't fight the cancer without the help of medical treatment. It was my radiotherapy and chemotherapy that saved me. But what I did feel that I could do in order to, I was in order to, there isn't a word for it. In English, you would say, to beat the cancer, but I didn't feel that it was a battle that I could win against cancer. Cancer is incredibly powerful. So I was very clear, even from that first day of diagnosis. So after that, I was wheeled back to the ward, and my boyfriend was there waiting for me, and I had to tell him. And and in those moments, I may have even verbalized it. I can't remember, was to say, I can't beat the cancer, but I can stop the fear. I refuse to let this cancer bring fear back into my family. I absolutely refuse. That is not acceptable, because cancer can be like kind of spread tentacles through the whole of your family and friends, the tentacles of fear. And so my practice was around managing my own fear. And I was incredibly grateful that I was surrounded by friends and family who were also able to take care of their fear. So that when we were together, we could definitely admit that we were frightened and comfort each other, but we were all determined to find ways to live with the cancer without it destroying our family, as it had already done with other members of the family that I mentioned. And a real turning point for that as well was sitting on the sofa in daylight this time, looking out the window, and somebody had kindly moved, probably my boyfriend, had moved the bird feeder to the front garden. And I was in so much pain. I was feeling so unwell, but I was looking out the window and I could see the birds on the bird feeder, and I suddenly thought, oh, aren't the birds wonderful? And there was that massive realization that actually I could be happy even when I was in pain. That was a turning point. So that enabled me to let go of the belief that I needed to be well in order to be happy, which is a huge relief, because it's very easy. And for a long time, I didn't see the trap that I was falling into of waking up each morning thinking, I wonder how I am. What did I do yesterday? What have I done? What have I done or not done in order to affect my levels of pain? And to be able to just stop trying to be well because I was well enough to feel happiness, which I could do even on the worst days, actually. If you look for it, it's always there. I used to think of it as stepping stones of happiness in every day. There's always a moment where there is something that can nourish your happiness, or our happiness, or my happiness. So that was another turning point. So I think I'm probably rambling now. So thank you, Sylvia, and I will yeah meditate on that one some more, because it's one that I hadn't thought about put in those exact terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. A question comes in online, which you've just addressed a little bit, but I think we might read it as an invitation to go a little bit further about family. And while we're doing that, dear friends, I'll say that after this question, I've been scanning to see if there are raised hands. I haven't seen any, but should you want to ask a question in person, please do feel free to send up the hand signal. So the question is about family, and you've addressed this to us already, but perhaps a little bit more, Katie. The question is: was mindfulness able to impact your family and friends as well, or perhaps how? And perhaps you could say a little bit more about it with family and friends.
Um, First of all, I think that would be a question that they would have to
Hmm.
answer. Again, I haven't. There's some great questions coming up here that I need to think about afterwards. Um, I don't know if it impacted my family. I would hope that the fact that I was taking care of myself was helpful for them. I'm very lucky that I come from a amazing, beautiful, loving, supportive family. And my sister and my parents and and everyone, my two sons were amazing, absolutely amazing. Um, at the time, I thought I was communicating quite well, but now that I'm so much further on in my practice, looking back, I wonder whether I could have communicated a bit more clearly at times. um, because I think the more deeply that we understand each other, the better that we can support each other, whether that's family or friends or work colleagues. Um, so I think I've learnt more about communication as time goes on. But I do remember an example of where I think I communicated well. So I'd been in some quite awkward situations with friends who had been diagnosed with cancer, but I'd heard about it through other friends. And then I wasn't sure whether to reach out to them or not because I wasn't sure if I was meant to know. And I didn't know whether they were trying to keep it a secret or whether they were open. And so there was a point in my journey where I definitely needed people around me. And I actually sent out an email to everyone on my email list saying, even if I've only met you once, I'd like you to know what's happening because I really need your support. I'm feeling very frightened. And, you know, if you know anyone else who knows me, can you pass this email on to them? And it was stating very matter of factly my diagnosis, my treatment, what was going on for me, and a very clear call for messages of support. So I hope that that was helpful for the people around me. And oh, it was wonderful from my point of view because I was just got all of these wonderful cards from people and literally just saying we're thinking of you, and that's what I needed. You know, I had family and friends who were doing very practical things, but at that point that's what I needed. So I'm really glad that I was brave enough to reach out to other people and with a very clear request as to what I would find helpful. And later, I used hyperbaric oxygen therapy as part of my recovery. And I needed people to take me to that because I could hardly walk, I couldn't drive anywhere. And just amazing. I mean, some people that I literally hadn't seen for 10 years would say, listen, I can take a day off work to drive you to Leeds and back. I live in Manchester. And that was just incredible. But again, I think the benefit of looking deeply, using my mindfulness practice to see how I could best be supported by others, and then communicating that clearly, I hope helped other people too.
Thank you, Katie, again. Dear friends, I'm scanning to see if there's a hand anywhere. I have another question, but I don't so I think we're content. Oh, there's one new message coming through. Excuse me. Um, okay. Okay. I've just received a question, which is wonderful. And Katie, I will go on to this one. I think I'll just take a little look. Okay. Another question coming in. And you'll see it in chat from Kaylee. Um, and it's there before you. Kaylee writes, you've already shared some things, but I'd like to ask, what do you think are some helpful things to say to someone who has cancer and is struggling with fear and hopelessness?
Beautiful question, Kaylee, another lovely friend on the path. Um, I I think the answer is around self-compassion. So to try, which is easier said than done sometimes, to give up the struggle with fear and hopelessness, to admit that that's how we feel, and to take care of that. So to say, well, I'm frightened, what can I do about that? So, on a very practical level, if I was awake at night worrying about something, I would then phone my oncology nurse the next day, leave a message on the answer phone, ask if they could phone me back, and I would let them know what it was I was worried about medically so that they could give me the answer. I also was very well supported by Maggie's centres, and they have so many wonderful support opportunities, and also by my local hospice. Um, a lot of people are frightened of hospice, thinking it's end of life, but almost every hospice has a daycare centre, which is very much about living with cancer. And there, oh, this is good news. I did get my art therapy that I thought of in those first few moments of being diagnosed. Isn't that wonderful? Just the most wonderful, wonderful art therapist called Faye, who was based at a hospice near me. And so with Faye, I was able to create and to talk to her about what was going on for me. And so by turning towards my fear, I was able to take care of it in some very practical ways and reaching out, including to the people around me to just say, I am so frightened today, I just need a hug and I need to talk about this. And Sangha friends were wonderful. I remember Sangha friends lending me books. No Mud, No Lotus by Thich Nhat Hanh was by my bed, and another book by Pema Chodron. I can't remember the name of it now, but in there was a really beautiful analogy, and this might be helpful for anyone in a similar kind of situation. Was there she talks about groundlessness, about how we all struggle when life disappears, when everything has shifted. We want to find solid ground, and we're struggling to find solid ground beneath our feet. And she talks about how once she saw ravens playing in the wind and the way that they just drop and then they pick up another eddy of wind and come back up again and then they drop. And that to them is fun. And she said, so that's how to be, is like a raven playing in the wind. So instead of searching for solid ground, is to just play with the fact that there is no ground beneath your feet. And that was a really powerful story that really helped me. So every time I felt that I was struggling for security of knowing what the next moment would bring, I would be like, let go, just let go. And to notice, I think the other key things that I learned was the reality of impermanence, because I would sometimes wake up, literally, it was extraordinary. Quite a few times I would wake up in the night or in the morning and my face would be wet from tears. Um, and that was another extraordinary thing of realizing that my body was suffering and that when I was awake, I could comfort it. And in those moments, know that in 10 minutes' time, I would probably feel different. And so that was another way of giving up as well. It's like all I can do in this moment is breathe. That's all. And just wait for this to pass. And there's a certain freedom in giving up trying to make things change, just literally breathing, just breathing and resting in the present moment. And then all by itself, something changes. Something changes. And we can ask for help at any moment. So those would be the main things. And I guess one final thing would be just a reminder of the story that I shared earlier about how I was aware that I could feel happiness even when I was in pain. And for a long, long time, I just was spending every day trying to be better, trying to recover. And while that's a really good intention, of course, that we need to take care of ourselves and so on, there was a day where I suddenly thought, you know what, I am defining every day by how well I feel. And so I remember it really clearly. I just imagined tucking my anxiety about how I was under my arm and just saying, "Do you know what, we're just going to go out and have a good time. And we can do it within the limitations that we have today." So the fact that you can't walk very far, that you're still in pain, that you can't carry a suitcase up and downstairs, get the lift, get a taxi, ask people for help. And that was what I did. I used to get on the train to go down to London knowing that I couldn't get my bag on and off the train, or I couldn't get up and down steps. So I'd just go thinking, right, well, I'll get as far as I can and then I'll just look around me and ask somebody for help. And there was always somebody there. It was amazing, really, a really wonderful experience. So by putting aside the struggle, I think is one of the key things for finding our way through.
Katie, thank you very much indeed. There's so much to consider here about practice becoming real for us, I feel. Um, Dear friends, we're going to take a break in a moment, and there's some more comments coming in on at the bottom of the chat. Maggie Dove reminds me that to say something important, which is if you order through the Plum Village bookshop, profits will go to the Being Peace Centre and to other Plum Village UK needs. And so it's a good place to order if we can, I think. That said, because I haven't been able to bring that link up online this morning, I've just dropped the Waterstones link without any particular endorsement of Waterstones, but just an example of a big UK bookshop with the details of the book in there, and you can copy that from chat. And I shall also do that again at the end of our meeting, the same link. So thank you. Um,
You're welcome. And actually, Miles, I do
Katie,
know where it is on the Plum Village UK website.
could you drop it in for us? Thank
I
you.
will, during the break, I'll find the
During
link
the
and drop
break.
it in. But if you
Great.
go
Okay.
to Plum Village UK and look under services, and you
Great.
scroll down, there is the online bookstore there, and that's how you find it. So you're right, it is a little bit hidden, but it's under services. And yes, thank you, everyone who's here and everyone who is considering pre-ordering the book. Then that's uh, that's why this whole project happened, was to raise funds for the Thich Nhat Hanh Foundation to
Mhm.
enable Thai's teachings to continue beautifully into the future. So that's mine and everybody else's motivation for sharing our stories, as well as hopefully um, helping others on the path, and ourselves, of course. As you can tell, this has been a real deepening of my practice as well, the whole process. So thank you for your support.